There's a misbelief that I'm going to use genders, but I don't mean to be sexist per se. So
Yeah.
let's say the woman stays in the house. The husband moves out, and the first thing this woman would say to me is, well, I have to leave, right? No, no, you don't have to leave. There's no requirement that you sell your house immediately. There's nothing that fast forwards this process. And I usually tell people, especially if they're a lower earning spouse, sit tight.
Your house is not worth what your neighbor's is, you know?
Well, and your house isn't worth what Zillow says.
Yeah, well, that too.
Right? I mean, how many people come in and say, well, Zillow says, and I'm like, okay.
Yeah. I believe real estate decisions follow life change decisions. You get a job, you're downsizing, you just got married, you got a baby, but unfortunately, divorce, death, all those prompt to real estate decisions. So that's why, I figured I'd talk with someone who handles these family law matters. And thanks for coming and chatting with me. So just tell us a little bit about yourself, Julie.
So I am a family law attorney, and I only practice in Chester County. That is kind of unique. Most attorneys practice in multiple different counties. I only practice in Chester County. So most of the things I will tell you are all of the things I will tell you are Chester County specific. I can add a little bit of what I know, but I only know Chester County. I don't want to say like the back of my hand, but pretty close. I've been an attorney for 21 years. The first part, I was a district attorney. So I did criminal law. I was a prosecutor, as I say, put bad guys in jail. I also said I never practiced family law because just seeing family and friends, I was like, oh, it's awful. It's sad. It's exhausting. But here I am. The truth is I do love it. I love it because I feel like I try to make a difference. Sometimes it's helping people stand strong against the other person. And sometimes it is getting people through this process quickly and as painlessly as possible. Fortunately, I do have a reputation for being tough and in a lot of complex custody cases. But overall, that's just the gist of who I am.
So I want to pick on you on the Chester County piece for a minute, because I'm a realtor. I'm licensed all over Pennsylvania, and people ask me, where do you work? I have, lived in Downingtown for 30 years, and my radius is an hour. I don't go more than an hour, more or less, because this is where I know the neighborhoods,
Sure.
where I know, are the laws different in Chester County?
So the procedure is different. The laws in the state are the state. So Pennsylvania laws are Pennsylvania laws. How we divide assets is the same per the statute. However, procedurally, there's a lot of different rules in every single county. Every single county has their own local rules, first and foremost. So that's number one. The other part is every county often interprets the same statute differently. So in other words, the divorce code, which will tell you how to divide assets, the equitable distribution code, Chester County will look at certain factors. They don't say this overtly, but my experience is they will use different factors and weigh things more heavily than others. I always tell people in family and criminal, stay in county. It's not to say that other attorneys can't jump, but the reason I say that, to your point, is I know my audience. I know the judges, I know the hearing officers. I can't predict what they're going to do, but I get an idea. But if I went to Delaware County, Montgomery County, I'm a lot less likely to be able to give you a prediction. So that's kind of the reason. And frankly, I'm just busy enough. I don't have to leave Chester County. So that's helpful. There are a lot of attorneys who do, but my general advice is stay in county. And to your hour radius, it is about an hour. Our county, Chester County, is about an hour.
Right. So in fact, my hour radius is more like borders Delaware and Montgomery as well, because I don't go down to southern Chester County.
Sure.
For me, it's like the neighborhoods I know. People know you. The professionalism is so important, right? The people who you work with every day, our professionalism gets things done.
Well,
the
so that's a good point,
reputation.
because when I go in front of, so in Chester County, I think there's 6 family court judges. I can take out one because she's a good friend of mine, so I can't appear in front of her. But that's only 5 judges, and they know me and I know them, and they know if I come in, or at least I hope they know that if I come in and say I want something, I'm not asking just for the kitchen sink. If I'm saying I need a psychological evaluation in a custody case, they know that that's very rare, because I don't often ask for it. And so that gives me credibility that they know I'm not coming at every single person. Same for divorce. So I don't always go in and say I want 60-40 for the one spouse. If I think it's a 50-50 case, I'll say it. And so I think that gives the credibility, and the court knows it's
And it's so important that your clients pick you for that. I have the same story, like if I send in an offer, what you see is what you get. They've done deals with me before or whatever, and they know the rest of the process is going to be. There are some agents who are like groaning when they bring us an offer because, oh my goodness.
Well,
So
and it's funny because I don't know about your field, but in my field, you get reputation. So in the DA's office, if I would get a file and I would see it was Joe Smith, it's not a real lawyer, I would
Mhm.
go, all right, I know that case is a plea. I know he's not trying that case, right?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
people think I'm difficult because I just say no sometimes. I know I have a
Yes.
good case. I'm not going to
Yes.
just agree to agree. So it's not being difficult. I know if I have a good case.
Yeah.
And
So you
people often want to fold, and I'm like, I don't need to fold. It's a good case.
I know. So a lot of times in our professions, people hire like if someone asks you, do you know a lawyer? Is oh, my friend's sister is a lawyer, or my neighbor is, and you just pick somebody without understanding who they really are. So same with realtors. There's a dimer. You throw a stone and there's like it'll hit 15 realtors. So not all of us are the same. So same thing. I love it. I love it. So coming back to these life change decisions which trigger real estate decisions, clearly say the housing is a big part. Like it is sometimes 80 to 85% of a person's net
Sure.
worth, right? It's such a big thing. And it, first of all, emotional, divorces are emotional, selling homes are emotional. So when there's so much emotion, so much money at stake, right? How do the profession, at what stage do you get involved in the process? And what stage have you, in your experience, have realtors gotten into the process, which is, the norm sort of?
So I'll start with the first thing that popped into my head is that there's a misbelief that, and I'm going to use genders, but I don't mean to be sexist per se. So
Yeah.
let's say the woman stays in the house, which is
Yeah.
typically pretty common.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, I would say more often than not, the woman is the lower wage earner.
Hmm.
So let's say husband moves out, and the first thing this woman would say to me is, well, I have to leave, right? No,
Hmm.
no, you don't
Yeah.
have to leave. You need to make sure your mortgage is paid for your benefit. And obviously, if the other person's on the mortgage and their support, and we can go down a rabbit hole in a different
Hmm.
podcast. But ultimately, the first thing is you don't have to move. There's no requirement that you sell your house immediately. There's nothing that fast forwards this process. And I usually tell people, especially if they're a lower earning spouse, sit tight. First things we do usually is custody and support because those are the more pressing issues. Usually, this person is receiving some type of spousal support. There is something called a mortgage deviation, which I can explain that a person may get based on depending on their income. But then I
Hmm.
tell people sit tight, sit tight. The mortgage is going to be paid more often than not in Chester County now. Most people's mortgages are less than rents. So
Mm.
people will say, I'm going to move out and the rent's 3,500. And I'm like, yeah, but your mortgage is 2,500. So don't leave. Take the benefit of the $2,500 mortgage and just sit tight. Like there is nothing that is fast forwarded in this process. That's not county specific. That is just in general. And I
Mm.
always tell people, as you noted, emotion, don't make a decision in emotion.
Mhm.
Slow down because the decision you might make 30, 60, 90 days after your marriage starts dissolving is going to be very different than when you're a year or 2 years down the line.
Mm.
Realistically, most cases with some assets and kids take anywhere between 1 to 2 years. It's not because the process takes that long. It's the emotional drain. So
Mhm.
usually people are on a more slower end. So the first thing is there's no reason to jump right into hiring a realtor, deciding, because frankly, your marital estate, to your point, is often houses, retirements, bank accounts.
Mhm.
But whether or not you can keep the house, we don't know yet. You need to identify your assets, value your assets, and then figure out how to distribute them.
You
What
a
I
little bit of
described.
where I come in when people tell me, oh, things are so. Sometimes I get a call early on where one spouse is reaching out to me because they think this is not going well. And the first thing they want to know is what is my home worth? And how much will I get if I sell it? And how soon can I sell it, kind of thing, right? Like the mental thing is I just want to be over. I want this to be done and I want to move on with my life. But clearly there's processes and there's all kinds of other things involved. And then at some point the other spouse gets into the picture, and then it's like I'm already perceived as that realtor hired by the first
Sure.
person. So then it's like us versus them, you know.
So I would say for purposes of, so back, let me just start where you started. So valuing the asset,
Hmm.
we value at the date the asset is distributed. So if you get separated, say you got separated January 1st, 2025,
Hmm.
but we're not going to resolve your final divorce until May 2026.
Hmm.
Your asset is valued, a marital asset is valued at the time of distribution. So we're talking May 2026. What a
Hmm.
house is worth January 2025 may be very different. And usually real estate is an appreciating asset. So it usually goes
Hmm.
up. So I actually have a case right now where the woman is very anxious to get resolved. There's more complex issues than just her house. And she's like, well, why can't I just deal with this right now? And I was like,
Hmm.
because your assets continue to grow in value or change, depend real estate, Retirement may go up and down, just depends. So first of all, and appraisals are usually by the court only good for 6 months. So
Hmm.
if you got the house appraised in January 25, you're going to be
6 months,
doing
you have another one.
right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So first of all, that's what people mistake. So we tell people that the snapshot of your assets and your debt are from the date of marriage to the day you're separated. But that doesn't mean when we value them. Depends. But so real estate is always valued at the time of distribution, unless it's a premarital. The next thing, to your point about bringing somebody in,
Hmm.
is first thing that to not do is make a decision without the other person, because
Yeah.
regardless of title, I don't care if the person is on the house. It's a marital asset. It's a joint asset that needs to be decided. So husband, I have a case right now. He's ready to sell something that's in his name. And I'm like, whoa, slow down. Like, you, just because it's in your name doesn't mean it's not a marital asset. And that happens a lot in houses. People need to recognize that even if you're not on the house, it's still a marital asset, and don't rush to value something until we know when we're dividing it. So that's
Yeah.
the first two things that popped in from what you said.
Yeah, no, that is such good advice because part of me thinks I would rather come in later when the other things are resolved because I don't work for the individual. I'm dealing with the transactions. I work with both. There are times when I've had to tell, the angry husband and wife, I'm gonna text both of you at the same time. I don't favor one or the other. Everything we communicate is gonna be via group text, and I'm not gonna. And sometimes I become the tennis ball between the two, and I'm like, you know, what?
That's where your job's harder. I only have one, so I don't have to do both.
And
But that is a good point, because look, the end of the day, they have to trust the realtor who they have chosen. You're not you're representing both, in that you want to maximize the profit for both. You're not
yes,
right.
that's what I keep telling them, that the house selling for the maximum dollar is going to be benefiting both of you. So this is not a his or her kind of
Right.
decision. This is a joint decision, and but I guess people are so emotional. They're so angry sometimes. I mean, there are a lot of decisions that have to be made to get the house ready to market, and
So yeah, that's a good one for it repairs, right?
yeah,
So a big thing that happens is people who are in the house pending the divorce isn't final, minor repairs.
right.
The toilet needs to be, I don't know,
Oh, the carpets
whatever.
need to be replaced or whatever, right?
Fine. So I always
Right.
tell people less than $1,000. If you're in the house, it's on you. But
Uh-huh.
I have a case right now where the person had to do a water heater,
Mhm.
HVAC,
Oh boy.
and those are all major expenses. And the thing is, people need to realize that you want to fix those, because A, that's
Hmm.
going to help sell it. So
Hmm.
you put a $15,000 HVAC system in, you're going to get that money, quote unquote, back, right?
Hmm.
So, but when you're in the house, all of those expenses aren't necessarily on you. You should talk to your attorney about, hey, I need an HVAC system. It's June, it's 87 degrees, and I've got 3 kids. Yeah, you're going to need to fix it. And whether or not they're going to agree to how you handled it is a whole different discussion, but it is something that needs to be
And you have
addressed.
a specific situation where one of them is still staying at the house. I had a situation where both were still at the house and the carpets were in terrible shape. And I'm like, the curb appeal matters, the first impressions matter. And, it
Mm-hmm.
just, this is $500,000 plus home. And, just let's change the carpets. And
Well, and so that's the kind of thing that, I would tell people, ask your realtor, like, what's the return on the investment?
that is my specialty there, right? Like that's when I tell you what you should spend money on at
Sure.
this stage and what you shouldn't. But we couldn't because the relationships were so, torn that everybody was in their corner and I couldn't bring them in the
Mm-hmm.
middle.
Well, and then I think so. I use this in a different way, but one of the things that I would say, if I were potentially in your shoes, to both of
Mhm.
them, okay, well, you're just writing a blank check to the next owners, because
Well,
you're
that's
letting them become the benefit of what you're forgetting. I mean, if you fix this and they do, so let's say they put the $2,000 in, now the increase in value goes up 10. Well, you just gave
yeah.
them $8,000.
Well,
Come on.
that's exactly what I say. When anytime a buyer imagines how much it's going to cost to fix this thing, it's going to be much more than what it actually is
Correct.
going to be.
Right.
So why would we give them that opportunity? Let's just, and there are some things which are so obvious, let's fix them. Do you get like, as a realtor, do I reach out to one of the lawyers and see if we can get some?
You can, yeah. I mean, generally speaking, more often than not, the two attorneys. So the benefit of the attorneys is we take the emotion out,
Yeah, that's the
right?
whole
And
point.
so that's the whole
Right.
point. That's my job
Yeah.
more often than
Yeah.
not. And you probably gather I'm relatively direct, and I usually try to explain it to people the way they think. Okay, well, do you want to make $10,000? Because I do. If you're telling me I put $1,000, if it's a $2,000 cost and I'm splitting it, and I'm going to
Yeah.
get a couple $1,000 bucks, don't you want that? So usually taking the emotion out and keeping them separate. But yeah, the attorneys should be able to help.
Sometimes people are like, I just want my peace of mind. I want to be gone and, not have to deal with him ever again, kind of stuff too.
Right.
I prefer it personally myself. Forget divorcing couples or anybody. Engage your realtor, all along. Like you have a family doctor, think of it as a family realtor. If you're putting $50,000 into your kitchen, just ring up your, realtor and say, what do you think? Like, what are the home prices, home values in my neighborhood? Should I be putting a $60,000 kitchen in a $150,000 house? No, you
No,
know?
right. Well, so
Yeah.
that's like anything. Like we don't, it's funny. I always make, I'll throw my husband under the bus here, even though I like him, don't worry. But,
Mhm.
for a while would make me cut his hair. And I was like, I'm not a hairstylist, my friend. Okay. Like go pay somebody to do this. He does finally. And I take, my son, who I'm sure I could clip his hair, but I do it. But the point is, like, we're professionals for a reason. I
Exactly.
wouldn't represent myself, and I'm sure you would have somebody
Yeah.
else helping you
Yeah.
because that's our job. And so if you wouldn't you wouldn't tell maybe you wouldn't. If you would, this is a different discussion. You're not going to doctor Google and say, well, no, I should be getting amoxicillin and not penicillin. Like,
Yeah.
come on, you got to
Exactly.
trust the professional.
I agree.
So yeah, I mean, I definitely think that some things I'm sure are straightforward. You have $1 million house, you put $100,000 in for the kitchen. That's probably pretty straightforward, but I'm
Oh,
sure
but the
there's things.
colors, like you'd be surprised. Like gray was in, right? I'm like, we're digressing here, but everybody was into gray, gray, gray. And,
Uh-huh.
people have like model homes and all have moved on from gray. And yet when we go to somebody's house, oh, this is what I'm painting my house. I'm like, no, you're not painting it that color,
Yeah, when
like,
I sold my last house, it was beige. Everything was beige. Everything was
yeah.
the beige color, beige, beige, beige. That was in
Well, we went from Tuscan colors to
2014.
the grays and
Yeah.
blacks and,
I don't know what the style is now. I've been at my house too long.
well,
But
now it's
yeah.
the neutrals. It's more neutrals. Yeah.
But yeah, you should always ask somebody.
Like there is no, and there is no cost to it. Like, with a lawyer, if I call you, you might have the meter ticking. With a realtor, like we only get paid after the
True.
house sells.
Well,
So
and a good lawyer, I mean, do I charge for my time? Sure. But if it's something simple, I'm usually like,
yeah,
and
yeah.
I'm actually probably not the best at capturing every penny. But if somebody called and said, he won't agree to pay this, okay, well, let me try to talk to the other attorney. Usually, when I talk to the other attorney, I would bill, but not for the quick phone call with that client, right?
Right, right.
And so sometimes, again, using the return on your investment, if you spend $150 having the attorneys talk and you now made a couple of thousand, again, stop. It's very short-sighted. And I think it kind of goes, well,
But it is not always that obvious, right? I put out videos all the time, just like you have the, ask me questions and I'm happy to answer.
mm-hmm.
I have some of those as well on Insta, and it's like a series, and I get calls and I get flowers afterwards. So I get a lovely thank you card and a gift card afterwards saying, thank you, Bela, because, they appreciate the advice
Sure,
that they got. So talk about property settlement agreements.
sure.
So this is where the context comes in. I want to be able to buy another house and I don't know what I can afford. And the first thing that the lender, if you need a loan, is going to ask you is, do you have a property settlement agreement?
So the property settlement agreement is presuming there's an agreement. So 99.9% of the time, and the how you divide your assets and debts is reduced to this agreement. The agreement is give or take 20, 30, 40 pages that identifies who gets what,
Hmm.
and if the house is being sold, when it's being sold, and all the terms that go along with it. A big thing, and I don't know exactly, the property settlement agreement can help in a lot of ways. One, if you want to get a new mortgage, you want to show
Hmm.
that you're obviously getting off of
It's
this
all
house is
resolved,
getting
right?
right.
Yeah.
The other thing is if you're getting a new mortgage and you need to have income. So
Hmm.
mortgage companies will look at alimony, but they want to see a 3-year term. So
Hmm.
those are the things that you want to make sure that your professional is your all of your professionals are talking, because let's say there's somebody who is making $75,000 a year. Nice living. But if they need a mortgage that is significantly more and they can get it through, if they have the alimony,
Alimony.
and you want to make sure sometimes it's a matter of how you draft the agreement, whether or not it's an asset distribution, is it alimony, is it modifiable alimony, is it non-modifiable alimony? There's a whole lot of different ways that you can look at it. And sometimes people do it privately. Like, I'm just going to keep paying this person $7,000 a month in support, but it's not documented. Well, the mortgage company won't look at what you didn't document. So that's
Absolutely.
also part of a support order. So one of the
But
things that comes up often, people say, well, can't he just stay on the mortgage for another 5 years? Well, sure, he could. But that's tying up his credit, right?
yeah,
And that's not usually what we do. Similar, yeah, but do you want him on that title with you, and then you're kind of continually, the whole point of divorce is to go like this, not to stay like this. So the property settlement agreement is going to dictate the terms of your divorce, whatever
So at
those
what
are.
stage is that like finalized? Is that
The
like
end.
so my divorce is ongoing? Like, you know how sometimes you hear it's going on for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years.
Mm.
But at what stage, like if the property settlement agreement is decided, is that like for the most part, or
It's
there
at
is
the
other
end.
things?
It's at the end. It's
That's
like,
the end.
so think about this. So custody, so every case is different, but if there's kids, different incomes, meaning just one makes more than the other,
Hmm.
and there's property. Custody stays in its lane, support stays in its lane, although they do kind of cross in custody.
Hmm.
And then the asset division is the property settlement agreement. Can you put
Hmm.
other terms in there? Sure. But the
Hmm.
reason I say that is most people, when they come in, if they have kids, will use mine. I have two 16-year-olds and a 13-year-old. One of the first things I'm going to worry about is what's happening to the kids. So
Yes.
that can become a back and forth. So we usually deal with the custody, then we deal with the support. And that's when usually people have both emotional and litigation fatigue. I need a break. So then
Yeah.
everything just sits tight. And then at the very end, when we're actually getting your divorce decree, is when we get the agreement. So
Hmm.
give or take, the property settlement agreement is signed. More often than not, there's exceptions to every rule, but like if someone's keeping their health insurance, the other person on their health insurance, we might not file all the paperwork right away. But the property settlement agreement signed, the documents are signed with the courts, you're getting your decree in 6 to 8 weeks from there. So then you're divorced usually 2-ish months after you sign your property settlement agreement. That's the usual. That doesn't mean it's always.
So I'm going to go back to some of that. As you were talking, I saw that timeline and it makes sense logically, but that's not how most people work. The first thing you said is sit tight, don't go anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And I have people who tell me I just need one of them at least needs to get out of the house now because they
Well,
can't
that's
stand
different.
each other,
That's a different situation.
right?
I'm saying two people. So you can't get support, by the way, or custody unless if you're in the same house.
Right.
Courts don't give an order in support or custody if you're in the same house. So if
Hmm.
someone's out of the house and they have a support order and they have their custody order and they're separate, and usually at that point, the person receiving support's like, I get this much, meaning they didn't have control over their finances. That's when I usually say, sit tight, collect the support, let things settle down. There's no rush to resolve your assets because the assets are preserved, meaning what your assets are from your marriage. I mean, if people are dissipating them and liquidating assets, that's a different discussion. But for the most part, your assets are preserved. Your retirement's still there, the house is there.
So
It's
give me, I have a situation where the couple, they decided to move out. They're both renting. To me, in my mind, you own this house, you had a great mortgage. Why on earth would you move out and pay two rents?
that's stupid.
Just resolve whatever while you're living
That's just
together.
dumb. Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, there's people who are like, I'm going to move out. I'm like, why? You're paying less in mortgage. Don't do
Yes.
that.
But they can't, yeah, I guess they can't coexist in the same house, and the house is deteriorating in the meantime, and they feel like they might get some equity out of it, and they both want the money and they want it sooner because they think the other one might do something and there's no trust and, you know.
So if you have an attorney involved, both parties, look, I'm an attorney. I've had to have a business attorney, an employment attorney. My husband's an attorney, so he did my trust. No, I trust. I don't have a trust. My will, things like that. So I don't do those things myself, right? So hire an attorney because the attorney is going to tell you if,
Right.
and I'll throw her out that she's going to leave, and I'm representing him, and it's beneficial for him to stay in the house. Then your attorney should tell you
Hmm.
I'm not a financial advisor, but I can tell you that 2,500 is less than 3,500.
Well, so
Stay in the house because here's the thing, the asset continues to grow. And yes, will she get a portion of the increase in value? Sure, but you'd have to pay to live somewhere anyway.
yeah,
So it's almost like this is where it goes into people being impetuous and making decision and emotion.
without the professionals, because even
Right.
the realtor can tell you your two rents are going to be higher than the one mortgage.
Sure. Right. But
That's a
people
no-brainer.
people don't. So I think that I just used this yesterday to a client. I could tell she was very emotional, and I said, if you're talking to your kids, I think she had a college student, a senior, and an eighth grader. I said, if your kids are upset and you're trying to explain something to them, can they hear you? And she said, well, no. And I'm like, that's the same thing here. You're not hearing me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're not hearing me because she's in the same house with this person. He was always financially in control. He's trying to be in control again. And I forget exactly what she said, but I said, stop trying to please him. That time is done. Stop. And I said to her, you're in emotion. You're not listening to me. I said, you need to listen to me telling you how to get to a place, meaning physically separate, so you can hear me. Because when you're in the same house and you're not having that separation, or if you're making decisions in emotion, now you're stuck with that consequence and you maybe should never have done it.
I know.
So yeah, I think
So
people
what
just are a little too quick to make
Yeah, I
rash.
listened to some of your podcasts and you talk about, I heard, well, first of all, I love that Julieism where you say litigation should only be what, like, final resort, end resort, and not
Yep.
last resort and not
Not a first response,
the
right?
first response, right? I love that. Because that's another thing that we say all the time when you pay, I'm giving a lot of free advice. I mean, we are good at our skills. We're good at what we do. I know my contracts, I know my neighborhoods, I know real estate. But most of my job is people management, right? It's emotions, taking the emotions away and all that. So another thing that I heard you say, which I was like absolutely resonates with me, is I tell them what they need to hear,
Mhm.
not what they want to hear. I've said this so many times.
Mhm. I
If you
said that
think your house
yesterday.
is worth $1 million, but it's not, I'm telling you what it's worth. You know,
Sure.
like, yes, your neighbor sold for that, but no, you haven't made any upgrades in the last 30 years. Your house is not worth what your neighbor's is. You know.
Well, and your house isn't worth what Zillow says.
Yeah, well, that too.
Right? I mean, how many people come in and say, "Well, Zillow says," and I'm like, "Okay."
Yeah.
But
Well,
I
Zillow
think
keeps me in business because then they realize, and I'm not afraid. Like, I'm 15 years in the business. I'm not afraid to tell them what they need to hear. You
Mhm.
know, sometimes that makes a difference between the success at the end of it all.
Sure.
My reviews show it at the end of the day, but it's hard to convince them at the beginning. You know, at the end of the day, they see it when they go through the process, right?
Well, I will say, and I used this yesterday, the person who was emotional. I said, if I had a penny, maybe not a penny, I haven't
Yeah.
represented that many people to get a lot of money out of a penny, but how many, and I'll, again, mostly women who have said, I'm so glad you made me slow down
Yes.
because I would have made a lot different and worse decision had I done it as quickly and rashly. And a lot of people will say, "Well, I just want to agree to say $100,000." And here, I always use this as my analogy. I go, "Okay, fine. You want to just throw a number out there?" Like, "Yeah, I'm going to throw a number out there." So I say, "Okay, tell me what you're going to buy my house for." And they
Hmm.
sit and look at me. And I'm like, "What? Give me an offer."
Hmm.
And they'll say, "Well, I don't know." And I'm like, "Yeah, you don't know because you don't know where it is, you don't know how big it is, you don't know when I updated it, you don't
Right.
know, all the things that you need to know." I said, "So you need to know, like, you need information to know how to make that decision." So it goes into like slowing down because when you give it to people in a way that they can understand, and I did that this morning. I was like, and the woman said, "I'll give you $500,000." And I go, "Well, you would make a really great deal. I don't have that amazing of a house, but it's definitely more than 500,000." But my point to her was like, stop just making rash decisions because if I had made that decision because I just wanted to get out, it'd been a bad decision.
Yeah.
So sometimes, like, my office jokes that I love an analogy because I do. But the reason I do is it helps people stop and think in a different way.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, you could write a book about all the stories that you
Mm-hmm.
have experienced, right? Same here. You know, we all deal with people and, they make some wonderful stories. Some of my most creative sales have been with divorcing couples.
Mm-hmm.
That would get a laugh or that would get, that would make a movie or something. You know, some others are, I'm a little more serious about my craft, so I don't get into it. But the divorcing sometimes is just, it's really funny. Sometimes I get, can I tell you a funny story?
Sure.
It's Valentine's Day and I'm doing a showing at my own listing and it's the couple that where I was the tennis ball, there's
Mm-hmm.
bouncing back and forth. And I see a lovely lacy bra right next to my brochures, my seller's disclosure, my business cards. And apparently it was a gift from a significant other and the divorce hasn't been finalized yet. And it's like, oh, I forgot it over there. Can you please put it away from me? I'm like, no, you didn't forget. Like, you could have left it in your bathroom. You could have left it in your bedroom. You could be in the laundry basket. It's right here as soon as I open the door next to my brochures.
Mm-hmm.
So it is crazy the things that we have to deal with. And I'm like, this is, as it is, it's stressful. Selling a house is not easy.
Mm-hmm.
Downsizing personal possessions, figuring out where you're going next, figuring out finances is not easy. So give us like two or three little Julieisms that say, okay, like this is where you want to start. And at the end of the day, always come back to this.
With regards to real estate.
No, with selling or dealing with your home during the divorce.
Well, I think the first is that other than don't trust Zillow, right? I mean, I kind of started with
That's a
that.
good one. I
Zillow
think
doesn't mean anything.
it almost feels
Um,
like I slipped you a 20 to say that, but yeah.
but it's true because my client in a hypothetical will pay for the appraisal and they're not crazy expensive. I think they're now $600 maybe. 600. I don't remember. I don't pay the bill, but I know that it's something like that. But then the other side will come in and be like, well, Zillow says, and I'm like, well, Zillow, might say that I'm the Queen of England, but I'm not, right? Like it doesn't mean it's true. That's the other thing. The internet doesn't always mean that it's true. All right.
Hmm.
So
And even an appraisal, I have on video saying that appraisal is one person's opinion of value. I
Sure.
don't think most people realize that it is one person's opinion. You call that same person out 2 months later, he will have a different, or 3 weeks later, he will have a different opinion of value. You send in three appraisers in at the same time, they will have three different values.
Well, that's like any lawyer, right? Any lawyer is going to have, I could deal with a case different than another lawyer. Doesn't mean we're wrong. It's just how we're going to approach the
It's just
case.
you need a benchmark to use
Sure.
for.
And I think the other thing, at least in Chester County, there are a couple of appraisers who are used frequently. And the
Mhm.
reason I say that is because if you want to go rogue and shop
Mhm.
around, if you're the person who is not keeping the house, the other side is, you're going to want a high appraisal, right? Because you want
Mhm.
more value.
Yeah,
Keeping the house, you want a low appraisal, right?
yeah.
But it doesn't necessarily benefit to do that game. Use the ones that are trusted. Your attorney is going to say, these people are trusted. And it goes to the same reason we started with. Because when I go in front of the hearing officer and they see the name of a person they know, they're going to
Absolutely.
trust it. They're not, if I go in from someone up in Luzerne County who has no idea about Chester County, they're going to lose. They're going to lose the credibility right then and there.
But that's why local helps. Absolutely.
Well, and the
Absolutely.
other part is if you're going to sell your house, people come in, I need an appraisal. Well, are you keeping it? I don't know. Well, if you're not keeping it, don't get an appraisal. If you're selling
Yeah,
it, the market will tell you what it's worth.
exactly.
So don't get an appraisal if you're not going to sell it. Or if you're going to, yeah, if you're going to sell it, then you don't need an appraisal. And
Yeah.
I think everybody wants to like, I always use the term count, like, get the every can of Who hash. Like, okay, if you want to get every can of Who hash, you're wasting your money, but that's a whole nother discussion. If you actually want to, that's why you wait till the end, whether or not
Mhm.
you're going to keep the house and if you're going to sell it. And if you're going to sell it, wait to hire the realtor so you both buy in to that person
Mhm.
and then trust the process. Our agreements, so sometimes we do agreements to sell prior to the final property settlement agreement. And those are usually going to say you need to trust the realtor, not trust, but it'll say follow the realtor's
Mhm.
recommendations. And then we can get so into the weeds as to if you get an offer within 5%, different types of things. But ultimately, like anything, if it's your life, you should be in control. The last thing you want to do is to have a court tell you what to do. And so people who can't agree that the grass is green and the sky is blue is inviting a neutral third party who doesn't know your life and having them make a decision. So the more that you can get your ego out of the way and let people guide you and therefore help you make a decision, the better you're going to be.
That's a great one to, wrap up here. I love it. Like, my little tagline is I give you the information you need to make the right decisions for
Mm-hmm.
your family.
Mm-hmm.
So the lawyer is going to give you all kinds of options. Your realtor is going to give you all the information you need, and now you can make some educated decisions.
And the other thing I'll just add, because this is a common mistake, I will say that I see, are people keeping the house, and you started with this, for
Hmm.
emotional reasons.
Hmm.
This is the house my kids grew up in.
Of course, yeah.
This is the house that, I'll pretend it's my son. Kieran took his first steps in. Well, guess
Yeah.
what? Kieran doesn't remember taking his first steps. But if you can't pay to take your kids on vacation because you have to pay a house that's too expensive, is that worth it? And
Mm.
so becoming less emotional about things is a really important part of this process because I see a lot of people, and again, I'll be sexist here, a lot of women keeping houses that they shouldn't when they can't afford it. And while it's not my job to give financial advice, if I'm telling you and a hearing officer is telling you you can't afford the house, and probably you're telling the person you really can't afford this house,
And your lender is telling you as well that.
right? I mean, people will give you money if you're going to pay enough interest.
Yeah.
Well, and I will add, there's one point on the interest I think is relevant for you, but ultimately, don't keep a house for nostalgic reasons.
Mhm.
So, and that goes back to the interest rate. That's what I was going to jump in on.
But what's that pro tip on the interest? I'd love to hear about the mortgage
Well,
thing.
so when you're dividing assets, you have to take into consideration tax consequences, cost of sale, realtor fees,
Mhm.
which is now 6%, as
Mhm.
opposed to we used to do 7% as the cost of sale. But people would come in and go, well, my mortgage rate is 2.5%. Now I don't know what it is now. I think it's five and a quarter,
Mhm.
five and three
Six,
quarters or
low
something.
sixes actually now to
Okay, so low
get a new
sixes.
one.
But at one point it was seven something.
Yeah,
And it's
yeah,
like,
yeah.
well, doesn't that factor in? No. So like I was lucky in 2020, I refinanced. I don't know what my mortgage rate is, under 3. And if I got divorced and I had to refinance that mortgage, that's on me keeping that mortgage. So
Mhm.
even though I'm keeping the mortgage, now I'm going to be paying 4% additional interest or whatever it is.
Mhm.
So just know, like, you're not going to always keep that mortgage rate, which is a big
Mhm.
thing to think about because a couple of percentage points on a couple of $100,000 is a huge difference.
Oh yeah, yeah. We talk about assumable mortgages. I mean, most of us, like most, the statistics are that 50% of the mortgages are paid off in this
Mm-hmm.
country. And people, and of the ones that are still not 50, at least there's 50% equity in most homes.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's a lot of equity in the homes
Mm-hmm.
right now, and the home values have risen. Like Chester County, when I started my business 15 years ago, the average sale price in Chester County was 354,
Really?
345, and now it's 580s,
Wow.
587. That's insane. That's
That is.
that appreciation.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, it,
That's a big
it,
difference.
it's a huge asset, and yeah, get the right advice and secure
Yeah.
your equity. Yeah,
Think
that's
long
awesome.
term. Think longer
Yeah,
term,
think
right?
long term.
Think
Exactly.
longer term. Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to separate the emotions though, but you're right. You're right. It's we can, professionals can help. That's all we can do, right?
Yeah, and hire a financial advisor. So I mean,
Yeah.
I'm sure you have people like, look, before you take on this giant mortgage, pretend it's not a divorce, and someone's like, I'm taking on this giant mortgage, maybe not your job, but it's not probably a bad idea to nudge people. And I do. I'm like, I can't. Trust me, my husband would tell you not to take financial advice from me, because I'm like, whatever, we'll make more money. But point is, like, I tell people, go talk to a financial advisor, because you want to make sure you're making a long-term plan, because real estate is a long-term investment.
Right.
And a lot of times these people are taking your assets are at least in half. Usually it's, so you have this giant asset, but you're losing half of the value when you get divorced.
It's a sad thing. I prefer in general to have the happy reasons for life, life changes where there's a new job and getting married and, getting a baby are more happier versions, but then you get these also. So
Yeah.
unfortunately,
Well,
no.
unfortunately, as I joke with my husband, he does taxes and estate work, so death, divorce, and taxes. So unfortunately, we deal with people's worst times, but it's also something that's guaranteed: death, divorce, and taxes.
Yep.
So at least when you're dealing with those issues, make sure that you hire somebody, for all of us, that is looking out for your best interest.
Right. No,
So
absolutely. Well, thanks, Julie. Thank you for spending the
yes,
time and taking
it's
the
good to
time to
meet you.
explain some of this.